AG is here. Audit committee. We are a quorum. We may start. Honorable members, ladies and gentlemen, let's just allow everybody to settle in.
The department, they're just going to check if it's
Is that the department?
Yeah.
Is that the department? No, not now. Give us some time. Give us some time. Hey, these guys.
But I don't know that, and they normally know that every year.
I know. Yeah.
Coming in with a. Okay, so just double check that it's the audit.
That's the audit committee, eh? So we only need the Auditor General and the audit committee for now. That's what we've got. Okay. Then let's get started, honorable members, ladies and gentlemen. This is a meeting of the Standing Committee on Public Accounts of the Western Cape Provincial Legislature for purposes of looking into the annual report of the Department and also looking at the Auditor General report as well as the Audit Committee report of the said department and its entity. The meeting is run in two parts. The first part is the closed meeting, which is a closed session of the committee together with the Auditor General and the Audit Committee for the committee to be briefed by the Audit Committee and the Auditor General about the audit outcome of the department and the entity. So the meeting is closed to the public and it's only for the Audit Committee and the Auditor General as well as the committee. Then after we finish interacting with the briefing report, we will move on to the second part of the meeting, which I will explain when we come to it, which is when we are going to be involving the department. For record purposes, I will just ask honorable members to please introduce themselves. I am Lulama Mvimbi. I'm the chairperson of the Standing Committee on Public Account.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. My name is Matlodi Maseko, and I'm the member of the Standing Committee of Public Accounts under the chairpersonship of Member Mvimbi. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Nomi Nkondla. I'm a member of the committee. Thanks.
Andrikus van der Westhuyn, member of the committee, but also chair of the Standing Committee on Agriculture, Environmental Affairs and Development Planning.
Good afternoon, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Pet Mran. I'm a member of the Standing Committee of Agriculture and an invitee to this committee.
You're welcome.
Good afternoon, Chair, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Derek America. I'm a member of the committee and also chair of the local government. Thank you.
Thank you very much, honorable members. Also on the side of the staff that is assisting us, on my left-hand side is Wasima Kamish, who is standing in for our procedural officer. She's also a procedural officer. And then also, of course, ably assisted by Lynette, who's sitting over there. And then also for on the record, Masintle, as well as an ID Siraj. That is the component of us. Now, when it comes to the Auditor General and the Audit Committee, you don't necessarily have to introduce yourself, but as and when you speak, please introduce yourself and the position that you are actually occupying. Otherwise, in the interest of time, we'll end up just consuming a lot of time on introductions.
Chair, there are not many, Chair. Perhaps we just introduce themselves because
Okay,
there are
if there's a
new
request,
faces that we haven't seen that may not
please
speak.
go ahead.
Good afternoon, Chairperson. Good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Adil Blau. I'm the
as the audit outcome of CASIDRA. Now, the second part is the meeting where we are going to be briefed by the department as well as CASIDRA about their annual reports and as well as about their audit outcomes. This second part of the meeting, it's an open meeting. It's open also to the public, either those who want to come physically or those who want to join us online, because when the members of the provincial legislature are finished with their questioning, we will allow those members of the public, either who are here physically, who would like to ask questions, or those that are online as well, to also ask questions. The meeting was also advertised in various newspapers in the 3 official languages of the province. So now the way we are going to deal with the reports, we are going to deal with section C and section E of the report. Section C being the governance and section E being the financial section. Now, before we start, I just want to check if are there any remarks, Honorable Minister, you'd like to make in the department as well as the chairperson, and then thereafter I will allow members of the committee and members of the legislature to ask questions. Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Honourable Chairperson, and to members of the committee. We are very happy to present those 2 parts of the annual report before the Standing Committee on Public Accounts, Vote 11, Department of Agriculture, also here in the presence of the Auditor General and the Audit Committee, together with CASIDRA, the state-owned company, and they also represented, and I'm particularly thankful that the staff and some board members are also present here, and I want to put it on record, my deep thanks and appreciation for the work that they are also doing and the great value that they are adding in CASIDRA. And Chair, I have also met with the chairperson of the Audit Committee, and we had a good meeting, and I'm particularly satisfied with the report that I have received from them. From a combined assurance perspective, we really appreciate the combined assurance model that is still applicable and still extensively been applied in this government, namely starting also with internal audit, the program managers, the CFO, the accounting officer, the executing authority, but not forgetting the important role also of the external audit committee, as well as the work of the Auditor General himself and the work of the Standing Committee chaired by Mr. Andrikas, as well as the work that is being done by the Standing Committee on Public Accounts. So I want to thank all of them for the collective results that we will discuss later in this committee, and I'm particularly pleased that we have maintained a professional, collegial relationship with the Office of the Auditor General. And as you know, I have called you the date and the time when this matter was resolved in terms of the previous audit outcomes. And in my conversation with you, I made it clear that we will not be victorious about what has happened in the Supreme Court of Appeal. We will be humble and exercise great humility, because the Auditor General is the supreme audit authority in South Africa, and that relationship is still intact, and it's even improved our professional and collegial relationship. For me, that is important, because good governance is something that we do not compromise, and good financial governance is one of the building blocks of this government. And I'm happy to report governance and the financial report to the Standing Committee on Public Accounts. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Honorable Minister. HOD.
Yeah, thank you very much to you and to the members. I'm covered largely by Minister. We are always happy to come here and account. So we're ready to answer all the questions that you may have. Thank you.
Chairperson of CASIDRA.
Honorable Chairperson, the chairperson of the board is excused himself. If he's asked for, he's apologized for not being able to be here. I'm the CEO of CASIDRA. I'm Keith du Plessis. Yeah, we are also happy to be here, and we just want to thank the minister and the HOD and their team for their support during this year. And it was a tough year, for us last year. So yeah, we are happy to be here and answer all questions. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thanks very much, CEO. Now, in terms of the introduction, because of the size of the delegation, we might end up utilizing the whole hour doing introduction, and then we want to be very efficient and economical with time. So, as and when a person speak, we will expect the person to introduce him or herself as to who he is and also what position does he occupy. Now, what I'm going to do now, I'm going to go to the reports of the department on section C of the department. Now, and get an indication whether are there any questions from the honorable members that they would like to ask. Okay. This is better because honorable members, I always take the report as read. So if you've got a question on C, please indicate both for Casidra and also for the department. Or anyway, because it's not really as long as of yesterday, maybe let's start with the department. Let's start with the department on C. Are there any questions that honorable members have on C of the department? Honorable Ngondlo, Honorable Kego, of the department. Okay, and then Honorable America. Let's start in that fashion. Honorable Ngondlo.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon to the Minister.
You look dislodged.
Not really.
Oh, okay.
The Minister is right in front of me, so I've got my, no, I just wanted, I think I only have one question to the department, and it has to do with the risks, the key strategic risks on the household hunger. I recall, I think during the discussion with the Department of Social Development, they did indicate that they are on a joint program because the same risk was in their annual report. I just wanted to check with you in terms of this risk that is sitting here. What exactly I see, I'm not sure what is N2F. I'm not sitting in that committee. Perhaps in terms of the current intervention, which is food gardens, from your angle, what kind of impact studies have you done or are being done to actually check whether indeed this intervention of food gardens as one of, because I'm not assuming that they are the panacea to the food insecurity risk you're mentioning, but I'm interested in whether such studies are available and have actually given an indication of whether is it the right thing to do. I know it's not only done in the Western Cape, it's done across, which is why one just is interested in its efficacy. Thanks.
Honorable Kego.
Thanks, and good afternoon to the department and the entity. Mine is on page 154 of the department's report, where we note the MCO meetings, the attendance. There is a Mrs. van Jaarsveld, who was appointed in October 2019. And according to this report, has never attended a single meeting. It says the number of meetings attended, 0. 0. So just for clarity that maybe the person resigned along the way, or person got sick and or the COVID dealt with the person is no longer there. So, and then on page 157, on the key strategic risks considered and addressed during the year, they're under pressure on productive agricultural land. It is noted there that the department notes that the land that is productive can be used for agriculture, is being used for other things, and of which it gives a list of all of them. And then now what we want to understand is that we all know that there is a lack of transformation in South Africa as far as to the issue of land access is concerned, especially in the agricultural sector, which talks to, for example, in this province, collectively, black people, which means Africans and coloreds, they have an average of 1% access to land. So what has the department done or is currently doing to acquire productive agricultural land to make sure that it is available to emerging black farmers, except the issue of food gardens? We understand the issue of food gardens because that's where black people are normally reduced to, not having access to the rest of land. And then on page 159, there on page 159, there are 2 separate cases regarding the allegations of fraud that were reported to SAPS. Another one also involves allegation of irregularity and non-compliance. Just want clarity in terms of the process, how far it is, as far as that is concerned. And then on page 172, with regards to the department applying any relevant code of good practice, which means the BBBE, in the last 2 columns, you responded no. According to the report, the report notes that it is a no. Now, on the discussion part, what is our reason behind that? And if you can maybe enlighten us, what is the current challenges that are there, so that we don't unfairly critique your department unnecessarily, so we would understand what is going on. Thanks very much, Chair.
Honorable America.
Thank you, Chair. I'm covered. Thank you.
Chair, you said we can deal with C and E. Only C?
It's C. Yes.
Okay, sure.
So Honorable America doesn't have questions on C. No question on C. Okay. Now, can we get the responses?
Chair, thanks. Thank you very much. The first question from Honorable Nkondlo on the risk of household hunger. Incidentally, yesterday, when I was preparing for this meeting with my team, one of the chief directors asked to be excused because she was meeting a company that has been commissioned to do exactly what you're talking about, impact study, on the extent to which these food gardens are responding to the real challenge. And you may recall this is the second iteration. 6 years ago, we did a similar study, but as a department that believes so much in evidence, we thought it was important to again subject this area of work to an evaluation. So I'm looking forward to a report in terms of this work by the end of November, which results we're happy to share with the committee. if it's so preferred. So that's really what we do. With regards to the N2F, and I must indicate that I very much agree with you that food gardens are not a panacea to a problem that we're dealing with, because the food problem in South Africa is not a production problem. It's an access problem. So people haven't got necessarily the means to buy the available food on the shelves. So the N2F, it's really a Nourish to Flourish mobilization strategy. It's really an attempt by the Western Cape government to bring all parties together, following what the Americans call a territorial approach to development, but bringing the food system, understanding food insecurity from a food system perspective, because therein lies a lot of other role players to then ensure that we understand that the food system of the Western Cape as a province may not be the same as a food system of a local Zwelitemba, because the issues are not the same. So we have started with that strategy. We started in Zwelitemba, where we bring all the actors in the space to understand the problem, but more importantly, ask the residents, because themselves have solutions in many of these things. So we don't believe that as government we should come in and tell people what to do. In fact, the Premier has called on all us to start listening. So we started in Zwelitemba. A month ago, we were in Langa, and we're learning a lot of lessons there around the work we do, and jointly with my colleague, Social Development, Dr. Robert McDonald. So that's really what we are doing there. With respect to the question on pressure on productive agricultural land, I guess that will remain with us for a long time, because as we want to protect agricultural land, other people see that land for other opportunities. And we are a commenting authority in terms of the law. So we would argue that agricultural land be protected, because we want to protect the future for food, not only for now, but also a future production for posterity. So that's really what we do. You asked the question around what are we doing to acquire land? Unfortunately, we don't have such a mandate. In fact, 10 years ago, we sought legal counsel as to whether we can create a fund to start playing within the land reform space. We were then advised against it. So, but you'll be happy to know that there are private initiatives. One that comes to mind is Witzenberg Pulse, that assist people who are looking for land, working together with commercial agriculture and other landowners to ensure that people get access to land. Of course, you would be aware of commonage land, which is properties that is under the custodianship of municipalities. And those kind of lands are made available to farmers. And once that has happened, we then come in and provide the necessary support. But of course, within the commodity approach, which is a strategy of the Western Cape government, this department in particular, we work closely with commercial agriculture, who in the main, we have seen a lot of them making land available on list basis. And therein we come in and support such farmers. With respect to attendance of Ms. van Jaarsveld, I really think it's because of the other competing demands. It's really not about the fact that she's not interested in the work we do. Ms. van Jaarsveld is the head of ministry, and most of the dates you would find that it was actually, she was committed elsewhere, and it was therefore impossible for her to attend. And I don't think it's got to do with whether she's committed or not. Extremely committed, but then the scheduling became a bit of a difficulty. And I think we'll address that as we schedule the future meetings to try and align our calendars to ensure that she is able to then attend. The rest of the issues that were asked on page 159, I leave that to my CFO. Page 172, I leave that to my CFO, and any other issue that I may have missed. Flores.
Chair, thank you. Both the questions, if we've reported it to SAPS, it would have been dismissal. So the dismissal would have been done because we do all our processes before you report it to SAPS. So it goes through a HR process and etc. So each one of them individually would have been done so. Chair, then on page 170, sorry. Oh. Page 172, the no's are I suppose we need to look at the description, the criteria. Now there is unfortunately a not a typo. There was a printer's miss. You will see the one block is empty, and there would stand determining qualification criteria for the sale of state-owned enterprises. Now the only reason why we say no is because we're not selling anything, in terms of state-owned enterprises, so it was not applicable. Chair, development of criteria for entering into partnerships with what we call triple Ps, public-private partnerships. Now the no is there because there is a very prescriptive way in National Treasury Regulation 16.1 in how the approach, in other words, there's a prescribed way of how you enter into a public-private partnership. Should we do, but we are also not at this moment in any public-private partnership, sorry. Chair, then the last one, criteria for the awarding of incentives, grants and investment schemes supported on broad-based black economic empowerment. Once again, that is not where we have the mandate. We get the prescript, and our prescript comes usually from the triple PFA, which do the levels on where we will do our supply chain, which you will see the second one, developing and implementing a preferential procurement policy, which is on page 170. There we say a yes, and we give a complete determination on how we do it. Furthermore, there is a bit of a limbo, if I can call it that, because as you must probably know that Regulation 2017 has been called unconstitutional, and that one we're obviously awaiting also the new regulations so that we can see what will happen then, which hopefully we will get before, if I remember correctly, before the 26th of January, now 2023. Chair, thank you from my side.
Now, just the HOD on ethics, this ERMCO, Ethics and Enterprise Risk Management Committee, that's the committee that's dealing with issues of risk as well as ethics in the department. Now, surely for someone to miss 4 meetings, was there no way that you could have asked someone to represent the person there? It's quarterly meetings, I take it. 4 meetings. Was there no way that maybe another representative can be sent to represent that, or was that not necessary?
Yeah, it was simply an issue of meetings clashing. At the time, we thought that because in the ministry there's only one senior manager, and this meeting is only senior managers that are in attendance, mostly from the department. So that was the real challenge. But obviously, it's a matter that going forward we have started aligning our calendars to ensure that Ms. Van Yersveld is able to attend the meetings.
Then there's just another second follow-up based on the question again raised by Honorable Xheko. On the issues of land, I know you said that in terms of IP, it's not the mandate or the responsibility of the department, but isn't there instances where the department see some suitable land and you think, hey, this land, and we haven't even come across such instances, and maybe when you see the suitable land and think, hey, let's approach if it's either the Department of Public Works or the national department for that matter, or any other department on that land. We haven't even come across such instances where you've initiated the access to this land and ownership, because we want to address this low percentage of ownership of productive land by black people, which is almost non-existent. You want to follow up on my follow-up? Okay. I triggered a follow-up also there, just with my,
just to lash on your question, I think what I want to find out, to what an extent is the department being an enabler for the HDIs in making sure that we increase the percentage of acquiring the land for them to do farming, and what role do you play in helping to identify? If I come and I say that I'm interested in farming and I've identified a land parcel where I think I can, is there a role that you department plays in making sure that happens? And I know that you give advice of what is it that I can maybe plant at a certain regions, but how do you also react to the budget requirements in anticipation of maybe communities coming with that request to the department? Thank you, Chair.
Put it even far better than me, Honorable Maseko. You've represented me well, the Honorable Chego.
Thanks, Chair. I think you and Honorable Matloti Maseko have tried to extend my level of clarity that I was seeking from the department. No, with the department having understood that most of its land is under threat for other unrelated reasons for agriculture, and of which it reflects in your report as such. There is a serious challenge and the department is under pressure. Except the issue of securing, how can I say, law enforcement agencies and all these kind of things, of which I do not think that there is the highest level of awareness community-wise in terms of occupation of agricultural land for other reasons. So the role that is played by department in creating community awareness rather than fighting them with law enforcement agencies and courts and everything. And secondly, noting that the department has got proactive measures to provide food gardens, which are very much limited kind of arrangement as far as agricultural land access is concerned to black people. So understanding that it is not your mandate, and it's a mandate of another department, which is rural development, but yet your own land is being threatened by your lack of mandate, and you would end up sitting with no agricultural land altogether, because there is nothing that the department is doing to provide land to those who do not have land, and they end up utilizing it for other purposes. So what are the initiatives that you as a department, except reducing us to food gardens, would you be able to do?
Chair, thanks very much. Maybe I need to state this, that this risk has got nothing to do with our own land, because our farms, we farm and we do everything we need to do to protect our farms. But this is about landowners deciding to sell land for other, I sell my land for a housing purpose. But then before an agricultural land is converted into all these other purposes, it's got to be approved by the national minister. We are a commenting authority. So all the time we say, no, we don't agree that agricultural land should be converted into housing. So that's really what we do. So it's a mandate to protect it, and that's why we comment. The law requires of us to comment so that land is not converted into other things. But in the end, that decision does not rest with ourselves here nor with this provincial minister. It's a national minister that has to make that determination. So this has got nothing to do with our farms. It's got everything to do with other agricultural land that does not belong to the state. So that's really it. As to what are we doing to engage with the Department of Rural Development and Land Reform, we do that all the time. In fact, we took a decision the other day that they will starting from next quarter, be part of my EXCO, where on quarterly basis we want to understand what is happening around the issues. But I can tell you, they only have 25 million rands, and that's all for the year. So there's absolutely very little that can happen with that. But of course, when clients come to us and say, I've identified land X, what can we do to advise? We assist with development of farm assessments and farm plans and so on, and refer them to rural development and land reform, but also to the banks, because we have accepted that with 25 million rands, there's just no way that government alone can do land reform. And that is why the initiatives such as Witzenberg Pulse becomes very strategic, and we've seen the work they do. And we're not advocating for this one and not the other, but we're saying we support private initiatives that seeks to want to advance the agenda of dealing exactly with what you are talking about. So that's really what we do. We don't leave people in a limbo. We support the best we can. We refer the best we can, but we also link them up with the banking institutions, which are also part of the work that we do. The underlying factor is that the land that is being threatened is private people's land, where people see value because they can sell it for other uses, and then our duty is to protect it. And that's what we've been doing, and we'll keep doing it. Thanks, Chair.
I think if C is existed on the department, can you go to the C of Casidra? Section C of Casidra. If I get an indication of members who want to ask questions. Honorable Maseko has indicated.
Okay. Thank you.
Honorable America is indicated. Honorable Kaiko is indicated.
That order, Chair?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Chair, I just want to find out, I think maybe also the department will help me with the response. We do have the audit opinion history of Casidra from the about last 4 financial years, and it's the same. There hasn't been the improvement, but when you look into that history, the details, it's like it's a moving target in different outcomes. So I just want to find out what is always, I think for the past 2 years, is the issue of the on predetermined objectives and the internal control deficiencies. And when we engaged with the AG and the audit committee, I think one thing that was highlighted was also the relationship between Casidra and the AG. Now that's where I'm trying to find out from the department, because I tend to believe you have to be the stability, or you have to be the voice of reason, as Casidra is your entity. Now, in the management report, what conversation happens for the sake of improvement there? And I know the assurance that we got, which we appreciate from the new audit committee members that have come in, but just to be proactive that it doesn't happen again, that you don't fall into that trap of the relationship not working between the AG and CASIDRA, because now another advice is, or another action is to have a steering committee to stabilize that relationship. And when you look at the AG outcome, I mean, for the predetermined objectives, for internal control deficiencies, it cannot be, it's about relationship. It's also about what needs to happen within CASIDRA. Now, those are, to me, and I need to be corrected, are parallel issues that have to be dealt with. So I just want to find out from the department itself, because CASIDRA is an entity that really makes the department also to shine in reaching out the communities. So what is it that you are implementing, or what is it that you're seeing as a loophole, whether it's a legislation or anything, but just indulge us to find out what is it that needs to happen for the improvement when coming to CASIDRA. Thank you very much, Chair.
Honorable America.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. I just want to, my question relate to contingent liabilities of 6,155,000 rand. Now, CASIDRA is the fifth respondent in this matter. Can it be possible if you can get an update on where this matter is, because it's coming on now for about a year? And then secondly, Chair, on page 53, it's an income statement. There is a expense related to consultancy fees. Now, there's no notes, that reference that consultancy fees. Could we just get an explanation as to what, for what that was? And if there are multiple consultants that were engaged for a particular matter, she didn't provide us with a list of those consultants and the reason for the value of the expense and the reason for it. And then, Chair, one other thing that, that for the past 3 years, the Auditor General lists this particular matter as a emerging risk, and now for CASIDRA is that the new GRAP pronouncements that we would be required to comply with, and the implementation dates are there for some, which is 1st of April next year, and then also there are 2 that is to be thank you, Ms. Kamish. Okay, thank you so much. So the question, Chair, is that what progress has been made with regard to ensure compliance with those standards that is going to be expected of to comply with when they do the reporting at the completion of this particular financial year. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, sir. Adding up to what Honorable America is saying, there is a reflection that has been done before we come to this part C, that CASIDRA is being outlined as a going concern, which talks to the issue of unsustainability and self-sustainability and relies continued of funding by authorities, such includes the Department of Agriculture. Now, if I look at page 33, the issue of the meetings that are being attended by board members of CACIDRA, there are 14 board members that are there. And the meetings that I held there is just 4. And from the meetings that are being attended, only 3 members attended the meetings accordingly. So you check, majority of members are being absent in most of the meetings, and these people are getting compensated for that. They are not attending, and this is where they are supposed to be taking strategic decisions and guiding this entity to be able to be self-sustainable and stop relying on government only in terms of its revenue generation. And then also I noted on from page 36 to 39 in terms of the people that are serving here, the directors' profiles. There is no second layer leadership that is being grown by this entity. Not a single person is representing youth there. I'm not sure if the department doesn't have any interest in terms of youth empowerment or anything. Nobody is under the age of 35 there. So I don't know whether it's an old age kind of pensioners arrangement or what is going on. What is the department doing in terms of, or what we call it, the entities level of youth empowerment there? Because all those people that are there, they are old age. So if there's anything that you're doing in terms of assisting us with the youth empowerment. Thanks.
Very much, honorable member. But CACIDRA, can we get responses on the question raised by members?
Thank you, Chairperson, and thank you, honourable members, for those questions. Obviously, I'm going to ask my CFO and relevant members to respond to these questions. I think in terms of the financial questions, my CFO will respond. The consultancy fees, my CFO will respond. Whether CACIDRA is a going concern, my CFO will respond. And then also in terms of compliance with the GRAP standards, if I'm not mistaken, I think that will also be responded by my CFO. Yeah, in terms of the board membership, I think that question was referred to the department, but I think just to maybe give a general answer, the HOD and myself had a quick discussion on that, and we will take that forward as well. But I'll just hand over to my CFO quickly. Thanks.
Sorry, CEO, you are saying on the question of attendance, you want the department to respond on that?
Sorry, no, I was talking about the youth, the membership of the compilation of the board.
CFO?
Chairperson, thank you very much. I want to start on the table on top of page 33. I think that table is misunderstood. We indicated the changes where people resigned or had been appointed. So when they did not, they could not attend the meeting before their appointment. So therefore, it is just that little dash in that block. Same thing after they resigned or retired. From that point onwards, we just put the dash there. And if you then look at the attendance, it is actually much better than you thought. The other thing is that we don't pay a stipend per month or per quarter or per annum. Directors are only paid for meetings attended, and we go even further stricter than that. We pay them per hour. So if they are only there for 2 hours, they only get paid for 2 hours. So meetings shorter than 4 days, for instance, is the hourly rate. Only for meetings for 4 hours and longer do they get a daily rate for that. For the consultancy fees, I think that part was mainly because of the appointment of...
CFO, just before you may continue, because I was going to have a follow-up on the attendance, but while we are at it, because it was also confusing me, as a result, I've noted, as it stands now, how many board members are available? Because if you look at it for a layman person like me, I will say, just like Honorable Klego, you've got 14 or 15 board members. But then, of course, then it shows there this one resigned, the other one retired, and the one was appointed. Now, as it stands, how many board members do we have?
Chairperson, thank you. We've got nine board members. Previously, we had 9. 1 retired, 4 resigned, and we've appointed 5 new directors on the board. So there are currently 9 directors. As far as the consultancy fees are concerned, I will have to go back and give you the exact detail, but I think the majority of that was for the appointment of the CEO in the previous financial year. The cost of doing the tests and the meetings and that, because it's a very senior position, the most senior position in Casidra. But for the correct breakdown and the smaller details, I will have to come back to you and give it to you in a report. As far as the going concern principle is concerned, unfortunately, if we look in the income statement and on the balance sheet, you'll find out that over the last couple of years, Casidra recorded a deficit. The main reason for that is not because we've overexpended, but it is because of income that did not materialize. We were warned or informed in the previous financial year that National Treasury is going to pay less funding over to the Western Cape, and likewise, Provincial Treasury informed us that Casidra will receive less funding, and that unfortunately happened. And that increased our deficit. That's the main reason for the deficit. But the going concern principle remains a challenge for us. Casidra is still looking for new business. And specifically after the court case had been finalized, we can now approach departments who were scared in the beginning to make use of Casidra because of the principal agent problem that they could be sit with. When it comes to directors, the appointment of directors, there's obviously a process that we are following. I remember I think it's 2 or 3 years ago, we went so far and advertised on IOD's website the positions. In the end, you need to have skilled people and people with experience, specifically in this field, and then it becomes difficult to get a person under the age of 35, for instance. The other thing is we've tried to headhunt by means of going to business chambers and the chambers for black people, and they did not even come forward with any, or they could not recommend names to sit on the Casidra board. It is constantly on the radar. In Casidra, directors rotate in odd number of years, but it's also difficult if you just appointed 5 directors to go and make big changes now, because they are hardly on the board for a year. So that's not, from that point of view, it's not good practice. Casidra is using the GRAP reporting standard for reporting. Yes, it sometimes happens. Specifically what happened this year is that after the finalization of the principal agent, there were reporting to be changed, and at that point in time we weren't sure about what else must be disclosed in the financials, and that is as the statements are here in front of you. I can assure you, to the best of my knowledge, it is GRAP compliant. Otherwise, the Auditor General would have reported us on that one. The predetermined objectives, David will address. Oh, the contingent liability, yes. That is a client that went to court, and there are 6, I think the department, Cape Nature, is also on the list. These things take very long. I think the first warning was 2 years ago when the client approached us, and we couldn't see eye to eye, and we did not admit to the wrongdoing in the first instance. So they went then to their attorneys, and their attorneys wrote a letter to us, and we answered that letter via our attorneys. The client also again wasn't satisfied, so he then went to court and got start with a process via the courts. Obviously, we objected against that and asked them to remove us from the case, because according to us, Casidra is not, must not be on that list. Now again, it's almost like I don't want to say sit and wait, but it's now for the client to take the advice from his legal team as to whether he can go forward with the case, whether someone is willing to settle with him, settle the matter with him or not. But unfortunately, I don't have any further information in this regard.
If there are no further additions from Casidra, from the department, you wanted to make some additions?
This question that Member Maseko raised, I'm going to ask my CFO to answer that, but I think the bottom line, Member Maseko, is that we are separate entities, and we don't interfere in each other's work, and we are equally audited as separate entities by the same AXA. So, but I think the CFO would want to add a little bit there. Thanks.
Chair, thank you. The relationship, us and Casidra, is purely through the minister. It's our minister, and it is also the minister is also the shareholder. And now, if you go to the PFMA in section 55, it will say that anything Casidra must report to the ministers through the department. In other words, the department can give the minister inputs on what they see. But there is no, forgive me, English is my third language, but we do not have an interfering mandate of any sort. Obviously, if the institution think we can be of assistance to them and say we can help them out on supply chain or whatever the case may be, we will be happy to share whatever knowledge we have. But we must understand we are 2 separate entities, and we are with 2 separate accounting authorities, and that can never change. Thank you, Chair.
Follow up. Honorable Ngondlo, let me start with you.
Are we on part? Are we still on part C?
Yes.
Oh, okay. No, I'll ask mine in relation to this issue, but on part E.
Okay. Follow up, Honorable Khako, then Honorable Mara.
Yes, Chairman. I still didn't get clarity on the issue of youth empowerment within Casidra. I'm not sure if I was answered or because I did.
The CEO said he will leave that to the department.
Yes, but now I don't get anything anywhere.
Neither
from the
HOD is also not youth. Maybe he overlooked that. The question that was clear is that, look, there is a lack of people with between the age of below the age of 35 years, which in terms of our South African definition is youth. So there's a lack thereof. I think the CFO tried to answer that, but then I think the question is to whether what is there a policy? What is the policy of the Casidra in terms of involving youth, especially if you look at most of the leadership, people who are in either executive position or in board position or are employed there are more eldership than being youthful. It looks like the eldership is facing some extinction here. So, but just below 35, that we must go to extinction because we still have energy, although we are over the age of 55, we must not be endangered species. I hope we are not going to make us to be endangered species as people above 35. You don't want. Can you respond on that? Can you get a response on that?
Chairperson, yes, let me try again. As soon as there's a vacancy on the board decides, or the committee get together and then they decide what are the skills currently needed on the board. Do we need someone from finance? Do we need someone from governance? Do we need females? Previously, that was the challenge for us to get females on the board, and we've appointed 4 females last year. So we've made very big progress in that regard. So next time, obviously, we look at the challenges, and then from the advertisements and the applications the nominations committee is getting in, they made a selection from that list. Obviously, in future, we will see, we will put a higher priority on youth, for instance, but if we and make an appointment if there's a suitable candidate.
No, Chair. And the Honourable Mkhontlo asked you the question, whether we are still at sea. Because I've heard now a response that speaks to an issue at E. Yeah. So, whilst we are there, Chair, because the issue of liabilities, and we have engaged the AG's office on that particular issue, and we have received a response. But what I've heard now is that Casidra is not actually supposed to be one of the respondents. You have heard the response when it comes to this matter that is in the High Court, with the 6 respondents. And I've also heard now that even Cape Nature is one of those respondents, and we will check if this amount is also listed as a liability within the annual report of Cape Nature. It's on page 291. If you look at liabilities, 291. There's two listed. The one of 800,000 for the MEC, and then the 6.155 million. The matter that's in the High Court.
The point on your question, I think it's on, we've heard it, but can I just allow that it be responded on it when we deal with E? Because it's being dealt with in both the Casidra financial report as well as also in the department financial report. I've seen it in both of those.
Yeah,
reports.
actually, I'm looking at the departments. Sorry, I'm looking at departments. No, Chair. If look, it basically results of herbicides being sprayed between a specific period, and the response by Casidra now is saying they are not actually supposed to be part of the respondents, and I'm not sure whether it's basically Cape Nature. That's let's call it the culprit. So for now, I'm happy with the response, and I don't think I will have a later on question. I'm happy with the response that I've received now from Casidra saying that they are not a part of the respondents. At a later stage, the court actually will deal with that particular matter. But he was also saying, the gentleman was also saying that it's actually now for the client to get advice from his lawyers, to see whether they will be able to remove Casidra from the list of respondents. So I'm happy with that response, and I don't have a question when it comes to E. Thanks.
That's fine. Thank you very much, Honorable Maran. But of course, when we come to it, I would really like also both the department and Casidra maybe can just respond even further more on that, because it's also another matter I've noted as well. It's fine. Now, honorable members, are there any further questions or follow-ups on Casidra C? If there's none, I want us to move to E. No, on E of the department. But also, honorable member, let me make this request. If you've got your question set up for both the department and Casidra, you've got them ready at the same time, please ask them so that we just got one line of responses as well. But for now, then, let's go to the E of the department. Honorable America.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just going to continue with the contingent liability, Chair, but I'm not going to deal with the 6,155,000 rand. I'm going to deal with the 3,538,000 rand. Now, it's a guarantee that is due to Eskom, but it's been coming on for a while now. Can we get a sense as to, when are we required to honor this guarantee? And because I don't think that we have the details surrounding that. And then, secondly, Chair, it's something that I'm very passionate about. It's a componentization of assets. It's been coming on now for the past 3 years. Departments will be required to present the assets in a componentized fashion. Now, my question, Chair, and I'm going to pose it to Treasury when we meet them at a later stage, as to have there been any discussion with Treasury or any within the department with regard to the process that you ought to follow or would follow in order to eventually, when it becomes a requirement for you to present your assets in that way, whether you, have some sort of agreement. And I think it will possibly be something that will come from Treasury, but I just want to get a sense that, we have begun the conversation where it is necessary so that we could not caught off guard. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Honorable Maran.
Thanks, Chair. Got a couple of questions, Chair. Starting from page 252. Chair, and if you look at and I'm not sure whether it's a coincidence, at 2020, 2021, and then this year under discussion, if it's a coincidence, Chair, that uniform and clothing, the amount is exactly the same. I'm not sure whether it's a coincidence, whether they have bought the same clothes whether the cost was exactly the same. 1,181,000 rand, and the same for the other. Then, Chair, page 254. I just want to check there's a 4,000. There's a 411,000 rand that's been written off. It's for external bursaries, 2 external bursaries. I just wanted to check whether it happens under this year under discussion, or is it only listed now? The 411,000 rand for those 2 external bursaries that's been written off. Then, Chair, on 259, and also 277 is basically the same thing. The underspending of 3 million rand, and it was basically for buildings, Chair. One of the pages basically explain why. And it's difficult for me to accept that explanation as to why there was a 3 million rand underspending as cash funding. It was meant at Elsenburg for those buildings. Chair, and then, Chair, there's a couple of notes, page 231 to 233. Let me quickly get there. And it's basically, and that notes speak to underspending. And I can see there is some reason, some justifiable, and the others not. There's under program 1 administration, say underspending of just over 2 million rand. And it says what the later suppliers were unable to deliver before the end. Now, timing is of the essence. 12 months is a long period. And some of these things happen when you put in orders 3 months before the end of the financial year, which make it impossible for items to be delivered on time, Chair. And now the request for a rollover of 845, the 1.4 I understand, over the after 3 years, million. So that money can be paid back to the Provincial Revenue Fund because you only have to pay it after 3 years. But it's problematic when I'm not saying, but in most cases it's late orders. Then program 2, Chair, an underspending of 2.2 million. Resource use of management. Now, the 1 million rand was not spent due to various procurement challenges. What are those challenges, Chair? What are those challenges? Why was it impossible to deal with procurement issues? To make it possible to and also the million rand will be back to the Provincial Revenue Fund, and I'm not sure whether we're going to get it back. Or is it a million rand lost? Then, Chair, again, program 3, underspending of 1.3 million, again, due to suppliers unable to deliver before the end of the year end. Chair, on the next page, which is page 2 3.2, there was an underspending of 2.5 million. And the reason cited is mainly savings due to veterinary services program officials using external service providers and traveling less due to the pandemic. Seems that it's cheaper to use external veterinaries. Because they're saying it's a saving of 2.5 million. And the reasons is giving why it's a saving. Less travel and other issues. Whether the department is considering to use, as from now on, external veterinary services. Because it's clear, if you look at this paragraph, it's clear that it's cheaper to use those ones. Chair. Then there's a program 7, agricultural education and training. And it seems of those students went hunger. Chair. It seems so. If you read, for instance, underspending of 5.6 million was due to the commitment of groceries for student meals. Chair. And then also other issues, but that one to me stands out. Students went hunger, I'm not sure for what period. And then second last, Chair, there was also an underspending for goods and services of 14 million rand, underspending of 12 million on goods and services which could not be spent due to suppliers who were not unable to deliver before the end of the financial year. Chair. So it's concerning. Say if you read through those notes and you see some of these although the department have received an unqualified report, these are concerning, and whether the department have plans to make sure that these type of things don't happen again. Chair. Yeah, let me stop there.
Thank you very much, Honorable Maran, Honorable Kayakot, and Honorable Nkondlo. Honorable Van der Versteden, also. Okay.
Thanks. Mostly, Honorable Maran has covered me. Now, but I'm on page 254. I'm looking at the long list. I think this week it should be the longest I've ever seen this week of debts written off. And the amount, it really serves as a matter of concern. For issues of overpayments, 3 cases, and then 11 more cases and 30 cases of SARS debt of residential accommodation, and as well as 1 case of air debt. Now, I just want to understand, how did these come to being? And then those who have been responsible for that, if there are any within that department that are responsible for any negligence for this exercise, and what has happened to such people. And then on page 259, partly covered by what Honorable Maran has raised about the issue of surrendering millions back to the revenue fund. Now, I'm concerned about the 18 million that the Department of Agriculture surrendered there regarding to the revenue fund, which is a lot of money. If we can get just clarity as far as that is concerned. And I think yes, I'm covered as far as other issues are concerned. Thanks you.
Honorable Nkondlo.
No, thanks. Thank you, Chair. Chair, I want to go back to the department in relation to the audit of CACIDRA and the response provided by both the HOD and the CFO. And I think we dealt with a similar conversation yesterday with the Department of Economic Development and one of its entities. And I think my question has to do with getting more clarity on what is the meaning of shareholder responsibility. Because if one considers what is in the AG's report and the findings on the two findings on predetermined objectives and findings on the control deficiencies, such has been reoccurring. Now, Minister would know, Minister is a politician, Minister would engage in conversations about the current situation we find ourselves in as far as state-owned entities in South Africa and the responsibility of those that are shareholders over those entities. So balance me here then. When, as a department, you keep on, and I think the congratulations have always been done by our colleagues, so I wouldn't want to really over-indulge. But how do you, in your work as a shareholder or your shareholder oversight responsibility over CACIDRA, ensure such findings do not repeat? And I'm raising this because I think in 267, one of the things I think is written there that the total, even says the total shareholding in CACIDRA SOC Limited is with the provincial government of the Western Cape under the oversight of the Provincial Minister of Agriculture. So with that said, surely it gives some level of responsibility. Whilst indeed by prescripts you are audited by the same Auditor General, but you, in this particular instance, you have an even bigger responsibility over that entity. So I think the chair was able to, ensure that our colleagues sitting this side are more than very happy with the response of the chair. So we're not going to go back because I would be messing up, my colleagues on this side. So I'm not going to go to the internal audit. But I really would want the department to just indulge us about what are the challenges that has led this particular entity to these repetitive, and I'm saying repetitive, findings under your watch, and hopefully you can tell us how would you assist in ensuring that when we come back, at least there is something in addition that you will be doing so that such findings are not in their books. On page 263, can you maybe help me understand the very striking increase in 21.2 of the payables listed there under 1, program 2 from the previous financial year from 14 to 40, and on rural development program. I just want some indulgence to understand what would have contributed to this very steep increase in comparison to the previous financial year. And also, if you can explain to me under 22 employee benefits that I think I mentioned there of the leave entitlement amount of almost, I think, 500,000 for leave owed to the department due to leave taken in advance. What do you mean when leave is taken in advance? So that I don't give a pedestrian interpretation of what this is. And then, Chair, moving from this one, in page 254, 6.1, on salary overpayments. I think we have kept this conversation from the first engagement with the annual report of the Premier, given its responsibility as the CSC. And when we look at the salary overpayments, we were then directed to have more conversations about the nature of these from the departments, because given their role of hosting that corporate services as the Premier, they did indicate that these come or emanate from departments. Perhaps you can just give an indication of what is the nature, the cause of salary overpayments within the Department of Agriculture, so that one has got just a better understanding of what this is. And then, Chair, okay, my last two ones, I just wanted to understand, I think it is on page 222 and also on page 224 on the economic classification. What would have triggered these shifts, particularly the ones on goods and services, and also I think, yes, also on both on goods and services, what would have triggered, what are these items that were budgeted for, and then monies had to be shifted, I think, within this financial year, assuming that there's planning that takes place in the department when budgets gets to be appropriated. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Honorable Van der Westhuizen.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Chair, on page of the department 263, there's a reference to leave that was owed to the department due to leave taken in advance. Now, to be honest, as a former public servant myself, I wish I had that kind of option to be able to take leave in advance. I normally first had to earn the leave or work, and then I was entitled to the leave. So perhaps if we could get an explanation there. But then while I'm on the subject of leave, it seems to me as if Mr. Frederik van Zyl doesn't allow himself to take any leave. And I'm just wondering what is the policy on that, Doctor? Because I think leave is there for a purpose. The leave is there to allow you to recharge your batteries and to come back and to be fully productive again. And then just a general question regarding the finances. I know that towards the end of the previous financial year, there was a directive from, I think, National Treasury that caused a bit of havoc in many of our government departments. And I do know that Dr. Sebo Petsa also pulled up the handbrake regarding certain projects to say we first need to get clarity on this directive, because we don't want to lose our unqualified audit status or potential status. Perhaps if you could just explain to us the cause of that havoc, how it has been resolved, and how can we avoid perhaps future incidences like this where really much needed expenditure need to be incurred, but then suddenly there's a stick in the wheels. Thank you, Chair.
Honorable America.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, bear with me. I'm going to cross-reference between the department and Casidra. If one look at note 34 in Casidra, it's related party transactions. Right. There's three amounts, and if you look at a note of Annexure 2 of the department, it references a payment to Cressida, 25 million rand. Well, I mean, that's basically what it is. Now, if you look at I need clarity. This is the reason why I asked the question. If you look at the income statement of Crescendo and you look at the transfer funding received from the department, then none of those three amounts add up to the same amount. The amount reflected in the income statement is different. It's more than 25 million rand. The amounts listed under note 35 in Crescendo's financial statements add up to 27,254 rand 379. So maybe I've just missed something somewhere, and there's a reasonable explanation why there's this sort of perceived in my mind this discrepancies. So, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Honorable Maran.
Chair, my apologies. Because at that stage, I was not ready with my considered questions.
On C, on E.
On E. Yes, on E, Chair. Look, Chair, as I've said on page 48 in the Casidra annual report, I'm satisfied with the issue of liability and the 6 million rand. On page 49, Chair, and we have also engaged the AG's office in terms of the understanding about the food security projects. In some, Chair, there was an overachievement, and it seems in some information that's been already audited in previous financial years, and in some this financial year that we are currently in, some of that information was also submitted. But let's leave it here. Although the AG is saying that some of the information that's been provided is not reliable, and in some cases where the AG go back and ask for, they could not correct some of these issues. Let's accept it for now, Chair. And then, Chair, lastly, on page 51, let me see if you can remember. I've sent you a written question earlier this year about Aqua, a project in Worcester, and where CPAC disapproved that particular project. And I do have the letter, because the letter that the department sent to those farmers was why it was not approved, was one line saying that the owners of the project did not submit, did not present themselves. That was in the letter. If you want the letter, I can forward you that letter. Your response MEC, that on a written question that I've sent to you was the reason why it was not approved. Is because not all supporting documents was provided, and therefore it was not approved. And the person have denied when I said to him, this is the response by the MEC. He made then serious allegations. And let's go into that. On page 51, 10 investigations. The agricultural CPAC approved 8 projects for implementation by Casidra in 2019 to the total value of 8.7 million. The projects were approved to receive mussel lines to enable farmers to successfully farm mussels in Saldanha Bay Harbour. There's an allegation that the chairperson of CPAC is an aqua farmer. The chairperson of CPAC. And that 9...
Sorry, what is CPAC?
CPAC is the committee that deals with CASP. Who should get assistance and who should not get assistance. There's your fruit farmers, the different commodities, which includes aqua farming.
What does that got to do with provincial government today? Have a relationship with us?
Yes, it's a program that Casidra is dealing with, the support to black farmers. Now, the allegation is these 9 or 8 aqua farmers, all of them is supplying their products to the chairperson of CPAC. The ones whose application for funding to buy their fish and their food for their fish was also a supplier to the chairperson of CPAC. And according to them, there was a fallout in terms of the quality of the fish and what's been agreed, what they should be paid for. And MEC is, according to them, that's the actual reason why the application for funding has not been approved. And I'm asking you, MEC, together with Casidra, to investigate that particular matter. Here is also an investigation, Chair, MEC, cumbersome off-take agreements with the service provider. And Casidra, I believe Casidra will have that all that information, actually what's happening in that particular issue. So MEC, I'm officially asking you to investigate this particular matter. It seems there is some concerns and controversies around that particular thing. As I've said, I've been told the chairperson of CPAC is an aqua farmer. You will know whether it's true or not, but it's easily to identify a person that is part of CPAC, basically, that took these decisions. Thanks.
Honorable members, in terms of, I've did say that you must ask, Honorable Kagwe must still ask. Now, I did indicate that you must ask questions on E in terms of the department. But of course, I've seen we've been kind of overlapping, which is fine. Are there any further questions you'd like to ask on E on Casidra? Okay. Can we get a response on E from the department?
Chair, I would very much like to comment on some of the matters that relates to the Casidra as a 3D entity and the role of the MEC and the government as the main shareholder, if that is fine. The rest, the accounting officer will deal with some of these other matters, and I will respond to the issues of allegations, but I'm sure that the colleagues of Casidra will also respond to that. Now, as we've seen in the documentation, Casidra is a 3D entity registered by the National Treasury. And in terms of a 3D entity, it's a different kind of animal. different from the other type of provincial entities that we have here in the Western Cape. And so the Minister of Agriculture, whoever is the incumbent, is therefore the 100% shareholder. Now, the department and Casidra, as you know, are two separate entities, two separate legal entities. In the department, you have an executing authority, you've got an accounting officer, CFO, and program managers. And in Casidra, from the governance perspective, you have a shareholder, which is the government or the executing authority over vote 11, which is the Minister of Agriculture. The board, it has a chair accounting officer. In addition to that, it has an audit and risk committee, and some of the members might be here. It has a human capital committee, a nominations committee, and a project committee, and a social and ethics committee. And some of these matters that Honourable Member Maran has referred to, I think, solidly fits into the domain of the social and ethics committee of the Casidra and the board. We have deliberately and intentionally managed the process from an arm's length approach. As you can see, arm's length is not the minister sits there and Casidra is there in Worcester. Arm's length means there's a distance, but not that far, that Casidra can do what they ever want, because this department, the vote, as you've seen in the transfer payments, make those allocations, and certainly we cannot isolate us from that. So the question more specifically from Honourable Member Kontla was, how do we engage with the board in terms of our oversight responsibilities? Well, one of the things in my diary that we prioritize, and I must thank the CFO in particular, is that, and my head of the office, because we try to get myself to have compulsory attendance at all these board meetings. So this is one of the things that I do on a regular basis. I do attend these board meetings, and I also communicate and I make an input in these board meetings. Now, at these board meetings, there are reports from the audit and risk committees that are tabled there, and I do ask questions. There are reports of the Human Capital Committee, and these colleagues are here, the officials dealing with that. And there's reports of the Social and Ethics Committee and the Project Committee. All these reports are tabled at these meetings where I attend, and I do ask substantive questions about these particular matters that are discussed at the board. These committees also, subcommittees of the board, they meet independently and then they make recommendations to the board where I'm also present. And I also make recommendations as to what I think is right and what is not right in those particular meetings. So I'm not sitting in those meetings as a passive shareholder, but as an aggressive, active shareholder representing the Western Cape Cabinet. But more than that, I also give strategic direction, because Casidra gets its money from this department and from this government. And therefore, I also give strategic direction as to what is the philosophy and the policy direction of this government. And so I did communicate to them the outcomes of the Cabinet Strategic Boss Parade of what are the 3 core priorities of this government. And I have also indicated to them what are my 5 ministerial priorities. And I must say, as also you can see in the annual report, I'm very happy that the board has successfully integrated the 3 cabinet priorities as well as my 5 ministerial priorities are institutionalized in the business operations of Casidra. So that is from the shareholders' perspective. I think the comments about one of the things, Honourable Member Kontla, is my responsibilities both in my department but also oversight over Casidra in terms of this committee chair, is to look firstly what are the recommendations from SCOPA. When I engage my department, I ask them, I want to see the SCOPA resolutions, because the first order of business is to see that I don't come here and have excuses, because SCOPA resolutions I want to see implemented by both Casidra and by the department, and in that regard I'm quite satisfied. So I make sure, because SCOPA is a statutory body, it's oversight, legislative oversight over the executive, and I'm quite happy that the HOD in his management style also prioritize the SCOPA resolutions and the implementation in that particular regard. Now, there are some comments in the report on, I think it's on page 33 of Consider. There are some specific recommendations, for example, of the committee, but the specific matters that Honourable Member Kontla raised, I think, is more found on page 34 in terms of both the sort of risks. So what the risk management and the risk committee does, they consider the risk and the code of ethics and the fraud prevention plan. They also monitor the continuous risk assessment. They make recommendations to the board concerning the sort of what they call the risk tolerance, and ensure that the management consider and implement those risk monitoring and responses, and also express the committee's opinion on the board in terms of the effectiveness. This is one committee, the Audit and Risk Committee, that I ask the most questions when I attend the board meetings, and I'm quite satisfied with the work of this committee. And if you look at the members of this committee, I'm very satisfied that these are qualified members on this committee, also CAs, and they give me outstanding value for money in their presence on that committee. Honourable Member Maran did raise the issues of CPAC on page 51, and I think he asked that there be an investigation, so I take it, Chair, but I would also first like to give the consider an opportunity to respond to that. But if there's any serious matters, then the committee could make an independent resolution, which I'm happy to implement following this SCOPA in terms of their own resolutions of the committee. But I think before that, I think we must give Casida an opportunity to respond to the comments that were made in this particular regard. So I think I'm going to leave it with that, unless the HOD would like to comment and the Casida colleagues.
HOD?
Thanks very much. I'm totally covered by Minister, but I would agree that on this matter we also give Casidra a chance to just reflect on it. And the rest of the questions I'm going to ask my CFO to deal with. What Minister did not say on the questions raised by Member Nkondlo is the determination by the Supreme Court of Appeal in terms of the fact that we are separate entities. But Flores will talk to that. Maybe before him, let's get Casidra and then get to my CFO. Chair, if you agree.
Chairperson, thank you. Regarding the amounts that was quoted, I'm referring to page 53 in the Casidra book, annual report. The short answer is the difference is the VAT. If you take the VAT off at the back, it is net of VAT, and then on page 53, it is the gross amount, and then we show the VAT separately there. To get back to the investigation that we've reported on page 51, that is an investigation conducted by the SIU. To what other details and what other things they are investigating, I cannot tell for sure. So the details that we've got and the information that we supplied in this regard is as it is recorded here. I'm not quite sure whether David has got other information regarding this investigation, so I cannot elaborate on whether other things are added. I trust that your question regarding the contingent liability that we've reported on under note 35 on page 67 had been covered, because the 6.155 million that we reported is exactly the same amount that the department recorded in their annual report on page 291. It's the same matter.
Chair, apparently it's me now. Thank you. Just one last thing, what the HOD has referred to Member Nkondlo's request is there were two major findings by the High Court and the Supreme Court of Appeal, and those were the one was on the principal agent principle, and it was then the judgment that Kasira is not an agent of the department, and so that is where the minister's response of arm's length and those things come across. However, if we transfer money there to do things, it goes in terms of a contract, what we call it a transfer payment agreement. And that agreement will determine what happens to the money, etc. And then we have Section 38I or 30 Section 8J around there. We need to see what happened with the money. In other words, we follow the money, that kind of thing, on the reporting of theirs and us checking on it. However, into their governance, we cannot delve without them requesting help from us. I hope that more or less explains it. But it has been determined with the judgments, with both actually. Chair, then I'm going to try from the first page. If I miss anything, please. It will not be on purpose. It's because I'm grey. And you can obviously bring me back to if I did not answer a question, because I've got about 4 pages here full of the questions. Number one, the 3.538 million guarantee to Eskom. Now, Eskom doesn't see government as a very good client or a paying client. So they see guarantees that, well, for us, their first prize is actually that we were supposed to give them money, which they will keep then in trust for however long. And we decided, but because we also do have a good track record of payment, we could change it into guarantee. So most probably for the next 10 years, you will see this in here, but it is better for us, other than to take a budget and put it there for no use, basically. So that is the guarantee. The componentization, it's a long word. That is something that we will do. The instruction will come from National Treasury, and then it will come down to the provincial treasuries. And then we usually, if we have something like this big change, it is a process that Treasury goes into with all the departments, so that we all can be ready at the time when ready, so when called. So at this moment, that is exactly where we are. It is what the AGC, I think, in their management report as an emerging risk. The risk part of it is just when will it be? So you are waiting on instruction, so to speak, Chair. Chair, then on Member Maran, page 252, the bursary write-offs, was it this year? Yes, it was. I mean, those things will be checked by the AG in terms of timeliness, and so if it's there, it was written off in the year that it was there. CASP, the 3.272 million. Now that one is you know, you don't shoot somebody that's not there, but a part of this one, the 3.272 million, Public Works had to finalize a project because they are responsible for infrastructure. There something did go wrong, it seems, in their tender process, which postponed this, and we could not pay over the CASP money. So then, by default, National take back the CASP money, and I do not have a better answer. It's not a nice answer, but I do not have a better one, but it is the factual answer. So then, pages 231, let me just get there quickly. 231 to 233. Perhaps I must just start by saying the first thing is that we are allowed a deviation of 2% by National Treasury. We are still within that 2%. So that is the first one I need to put in there. Now, I think it was Member van der Westhuizen that also referred to it. It was from reasonably early in Feb, where we got the regulation 2017 finding where we were reduced to actually 30,000 rand a transaction. Why 30,000 rand? 30,000 rand does not fall within the BEE domain. And remember, the BEE was in terms of that is where the Constitutional Court said the regulations of 217 was unconstitutional, so we could not buy there anymore. So a lot of our supply chain challenges was actually because of that. It was not process. Our processes, I think, are some of the best. I'm actually very proud of our processes. But you were reduced to 30,000 rand a shot. You know, that is the biggest you can go transaction. Now, in an institution of our size, very few transactions are as low as 30,000 rand. So that was very much part of many of these, what we call supply chain challenges, Chair. The 1 million rand, I think, was also that in program 2, where they said, now, as soon as you do river protection works, you hear that swear word, according to us, which is an acronym, we call it EIAs, because you get to a point and then all of a sudden an EIA needs to be done. Then it kind of stops everything and you've got to wait for the EIA to be done. So often that happens, and unfortunately this was one of them. Chair, then, okay, that was 2. Program 3, the 1365, that was straightforward. That is part of my 30,000. Unfortunately, I have the 30,000 excuse for quite a few of these. So, but many of those, because usually our surplus is about 8 million less, because we usually work on a 1% surplus, you know, to be on the right side of not overspending. So most of that was because of that. Now, in program 4, no, they're not cheaper, but if vets are not that easy to come by. So if Dr. Jin doesn't have vets, he needs to refer to other means, and that is when you start going out. But you can only do that on a limited level, and also it was some of it was in COVID time, so you can only do that on a limited level before it catches up with you. So that is unfortunately not a solution for us to become cheaper, if that is what we're talking about. Chair, at 7, I think I've just explained it. That's a 3.272 million because we were dependent on another department to finish the project. And 8, yeah, it wasn't much of a question. 1.442 million to be paid after a period of 3 years. Yeah, right. So here we have it up to now. We just had it per program. Now we actually have the same answers, just per economic classification. So most of those that I've actually now answered here adds up to the totals, because here the 14 million will add up to all the different departments, goods and services will add up to the 14 million, and the 3.272 million and others will add up to the totals here. So it will be a repeat of answers here. It's just in another format. But Chair, if you want me to go through that, I can do it in another format. But the answers will remain basically in principle the same. Can I move on, or would you like me to do it? I beg yours?
Move on. You see?
Okay, is it fine? So that was 231 to 233. Challenges EIA, I said that 3. Savings, not appointments. I've said that. Sorry, I just need to catch up with my notes, if you don't mind. Program, so at least the first page is done, Chair. Thank you. Program 8, a total of 14 million I've referred to, so that is within the 2%, as I've also said. 254, the debts written off. Page 254, let me just get there. Chair, yes, I think the first question is who can we blame? And that is not always so easy. Let's start with irregular case. That is okay. The bursary debts, it goes through a process. We go to the state attorney and try to recover, and then only after we only write off after the state attorney recommends that they cannot recover. So all of these go through process. Outstanding leave, yeah, that was not one of the questions. The other one is SARS. Chair, if you ever win an argument against SARS, please take me along. I mean, that is the problem, because this one took more than 5 years. It was more than a 5-year argument where they just dumped because they use institutions like us as their agent. And they say, here's 700,000 rand, which we say those people on your payroll owe us. And now you go to the people and you know, that is the back and forth again. And in the end, they wrote off in excess of 240,000 rand. And the rest we now had to write off. So I will be hard pushed to say who with us. I actually blame Mr. Kieswetter and his people, but unfortunately we sat with the debt. So that is the long and the short of this one. It is a once-off. Chair, that is the debts written off, and then we had 259 surrender to revenue fund. Yeah. The rollovers we get to a bit later. It's down my 4th page somewhere. 259. The surrender to the revenue fund. Chair, that happens every year. It is, I nearly want to say it's a book entry, because we got a 928 million rand budget. What must go through the books are 928 million. But as you could see, we did not spend all of it. So then we have to give back. So, you know, because we are on a cash basis, it's not like Casidra on an accrual basis. You've got to, they've got to pay it back to us so that we can pay it back whatever was not spent in the end of the year. So that is normal process. You will also see it in every financial year. The number might differ, but the number will usually equate out with the surplus. It will be very much close to that. Chair, that was that. And then we've spoken about the relationship Casidra and the department. Page 263, rural development. Just get there. Rural development, Chair, that is, yes, it is a steep increase. However, it is a small amount. This, I mean, we're talking about from 1,000 to 39,000 rand. No, I mean, it's just a matter of what invoices are outstanding at the end of the financial year, you know, and that is how it's made up. So that there's no trend, so to speak. I mean, that is the long and the short of it. Was the invoice or was it an outstanding order still, etc., at the end of the year? Because we give it in different forms. You give it in the form of prescribed as per program, and then also obviously in terms of the economic classification. So there's not I do not have a better answer than that. Next year it can be 15, you know, that kind of thing. But we try, as you can see, we try and keep it as low as possible. Because of rollovers will cost you on next year's budget. The leave, yes, Chair, that is also, there is a risk in it, but what comes up on your January pay sheet, you will see that your 30 days leave is put on there, but it's spread over the year. But if you take your leave in June, then actually, but the whole 30 days is lying there, then actually you take all 30 days, then you are actually indebted by 15 days. And that usually becomes an issue where if should you resign or else, you know, or be fired or leave the employment within that period. But that's the way it works. So it is a temporary thing. But it has a bit of risk, as I say, if somebody resigns, because then we will claim it back from them on the resignation. So that is the leave. Salary overpayments, this is actually part of that. And the other part of it is we pay obviously on the 15th of the month, but we get paid for up to the 30th of the month. So once again, if you leave anything after the 15th, you already have 30 days worth of salary. And then it becomes an argument of how you can try and get it back. And then you go through process through the state attorney, etc. again. But that is where salary overpayments actually come from. If we become aware of something like that, we can try and stop it at the bank, but you cannot stop Persal, because Persal, which is now our salary payment system, Persal cuts off at the end of the month for the next month. So you can't redebit it on Persal. So that is where those overpayments come from. But it goes through a process before we write it off. Firstly, we try and get it back. I wrote something about departments, 254. Oh yes, I think you said the CSC says this rests with the departments. Well, again, Persal is their system, so I'm not going to argue with them. But the problem is government has a problem here. Because you cannot, as long as we don't pay at the end of the month, we're going to have this as a risk. And yeah, I hope I make myself clear on this one. So they are right in a sense, but as I say, you have fixed periods for your Persal to finish off, I nearly want to say, and then for the next month, Persal cut out. So if we get anything from the 1st to the 15th, we cannot stop it in Persal. We hopefully can stop it at the bank if we know about it. Triple two is back here. 22 and 24. Let me just get there again. Oh yes, it's the same question. It was just in terms of 3.272 and the retention fee. That is just where we have it here on the appropriation statement. But it was also answered in the notes to the appropriation statement. Once again, it's the 3.272 for CASP for that infrastructure. Chair, okay, yeah, so that was that shifting. Then we are at the leave in advance, Mr. Van Westhuizen, and I think I did answer that now. And then we are at Material Treasury Directive, what it was, 27. Oh yes, Mr. Van Westhuizen made the observation of the Treasury elective, and I think I did explain it with the 30,000 rand a shot transactions. So that one is done. Annexure 2, Mr. America, that was the 25 million rand shareholding we have in Casidra. The reasons why we might differ, that things do not totally agree. You can also ask the Auditor General, but they will make damn sure that these things do agree. But once again, they are on the accrual system, we not. So we start at 31 or at 1 April and end at 31 March, while Casidra is basically taking a photo of the end of the year, and tomorrow they just go on. So that is the difference between cash accounting and accrual accounting. See, I think according to me, I think I've answered all of them. Thank you.
Honorable members. Follow-ups. I see Honorable America and then Honorable Nkondlo.
Thank you, Chair. That was standing the way because, Chair, I understand what the CFO has sort of just shared with me in terms of the accrual and the cash-based system and how come why the differences arise as a result of that. But what I don't understand, Chair, is the response of the CFO of Casidra. And maybe I just missed out something because I can't find the amount that is the discrepancy that he ascribed to VAT, because I can only see a SARS payment on page 61 of 36,839 Rand, which is not as close as the difference could possibly be. So if I could be directed, I'll be very pleased. Thank you, Chair.
Honorable Ngondo.
No, thank you, Chair. Maybe, Chair, on the discussion around staff overpayments, maybe it's something we can consider when we conclude with all SCOPA sessions, because it's not only for agriculture. I think given the CFO response, because I'm not sure whether, in my understanding of what he says, I'm not sure whether he concludes it as a systems issue, as you say, that this is a matter of PESAL, and therefore it means it's something that is going to remain there. Because remember, as I indicated, we started with it from the Premier's office, and we're trying to see how does this come about, and then we referred to the departments. So I'm interested in how we will have to deal with it, perhaps once we get there. I hear the response of the CFO, which is a bit technical, perhaps, a couple of sessions sitting with him, considering that I'm also eldership, I'm no longer young, perhaps my ability to grasp, these things may be waning a bit. I just wanted to raise that. Then secondly, on the initial conversation, Chair, I think whilst I take the response about, I think the judgment, the interpretation, HOD and CFO, the concern from where I'm sitting, one, is that on the transfer payment argument that CFO, you are already advancing, and indeed one must follow the money, indeed that already gives you a basis. Not necessarily, I don't think our question is about you interfering, dictating what must happen, but we are just concerned that surely the environment that you are able to sort of manage within the department, you should be able to engage an entity that you have a relationship, whether at arm's length. And that's why my concern at the point was saying the repetitive, because that's what we are raising here. It's not something that springs now and comes back, particularly on those particular findings. And the minister also gives us, I think, a process response of what he does and everything else. Does he then says he gives up because with him having all attending these compulsory meetings, doing all of this input from his side, at the end of the day, what does it deliver? Because remember, we're asking an outcomes kind of a question, because the outcome that we want is exactly what you as a department pride yourself on in terms of clean audit, in terms of the internal control environment that you have in the department. And lastly, is the fact that if you talk about the usefulness and reliability in as far as predetermined objectives are concerned, surely this department will have an interest. The discussion we were having earlier on about food gardens, which I'm sure, whilst I'm not in your committee, that you as a department deliver such through Casidra, isn't it? So surely you would have an interest of usefulness of their information and their reliability, to ensure that if there is an AG that is sampling that particular program at any given point in time. The results that are received there, it's information that you can stand on. So I'm just saying, Chair, I'm not opening up the conversation, that I hear the technical answer we're being given, but I think we would really perhaps find a way to continue to get the department to take the arm's length still without interfering, because I don't think we're saying go into Casidra, ensure that you are there as CFO, because there's a CFO there. But we're just trying to say, find these conversations and these processes that you have at the end of the day, delivering in the kind of environment that you're sitting with. So thank you, Chair. I think I just wanted to make, for me, those comments.
Honorable Maseko, then Honorable Marang.
I think, Chair, for the way forward, I think from me it will be for the engagement with Casidra to check that independence, how does it affect the end users of that allocation, and to get the gist of to what an extent is really that having a ripple effect on the services that is expected from the department, much as they are independent. And another one, it will be, I think, from the department to the department, we discuss the issue of underspending, much as it's allowed to a certain extent with the percentage. And like the CFO, you mentioned that the allocation, it has to be used the same amount, but whatever happens, sometimes you have to return the money. But I tend to believe that it's committed when you do the budget on a service. So just to have a look of that underspending as the scope, because from the department to the department, we have seen that the fluctuation, sometimes it goes higher rather than going lesser. We used to be on the 1%, so it's increasing to the 2%. And I think we are pushing it as a scoper because we know you can do it. So if you were downgrading with the service, it will be another story, but it's more of leveling up the services with the spending of how do we see that underspending, what is the trend within the department with the underspending, and comparing with the other departments that what is happening. We had a department that, was it the department that was saying COVID, and we even said that if COVID was, a person will come and say, listen, you leave me alone this time. So yeah, it's not me. So we just have to look at that understanding, the commitment, that also the ripple effect of that underspending on the committed allocation on the budget. How do we talk to that as we do the resolutions, Chair? Thank you very much.
Honorable Marang.
Thanks, Chair. And I fully agree with the response by Casidra on the method that's been investigated by the SIU. But why I'm raising it, and why I've made reference to this particular issue, because it raises a red flag. Because there's an allegation, and you have not touched on the allegation, that the chairperson, who is an aqua farmer, have basically influence for 8 farmers in the same area in the West Coast Saldanha to receive assistance from via CPAC. And the allegation of all those 8 are supplying their products to the very same chairperson. Where they could not basically assist that one aqua farmer who's outside of the West Coast in a rural area. And the allegation is because there was a fallout, because they also have basically supplied their products to the same chairperson, and the fallout that basically contributed, and they have not received assistance anymore. That's the allegation, and I haven't heard that you've spoken about that allegation. And I think when the MEC and the HOD have said basically, and the MEC basically made a proposal that we should take it up as a resolution, but let's give Casidra first the opportunity to speak and see whether they will come up maybe with a proposal, what they will do as an entity, but you have not. And I think the last option then is to maybe follow the proposal that the MEC made and say, make it a formal proposal that he must investigate and then follow that particular route, Chair. And then the last one, CFO. It's the first time now that I've heard that, and let me go to that page. But, sorry? It was in it's 231 or 232. It's the first time now that I heard that a EIA is part of a procurement challenge. Because what I read here is that the reason why the 1 million rand could not be spent was because of various procurement challenges. And you are saying the actual reason is because of a EIA. That you find out afterwards that first needs to be done an EIA. That's why I'm saying it's the first time now that I hear that the EIA process, environmental impact assessment, is part of a procurement process. And joking.
Now, let me first give the Casidra to respond to some of the questions that were asked to them, and thereafter the department. CEO.
Thank you, Chairperson. Yeah, I think let me start by the whole issue of predetermined objectives. And I think as much as the Western Cape Department of Agriculture is our shareholder and they have an oversight, we as management will have to take responsibility of making sure that there's no recurrence of this. And I think we are working hard with our Audit and Risk Committee to ensure that we put the necessary systems in place to make sure that there's no recurrence of this issue. So I think in the end it's our responsibility, and we need to make sure that we take responsibility therefore. Then Honourable Van der Westhuizen, a question around leave. We are reviewing our leave policy, ensuring that people must take leave, and also the whole issue of payments of leave days. We are looking at that specifically within our new leave policy. So that is actually ongoing. It's actually it goes to the Audit and Risk Committee, I think, in the next round. And then obviously the issue around the CPAC aquaculture is the first time I'm hearing of it. So all I can say today is that we will ensure that we do an investigation, and we will work with whoever needs possible to make sure that we get a positive outcome there. Then my CFO needs to just answer a question there as well.
Chairperson, the relevant pages in the Casidra annual report, page 53 and 67. If you go to the first total in the amount in the block, under the 2022 column, it's 25,318 million. And underneath that, you'll see VAT 3.302348. I'm on page 53, Casidra's pack. Page 53, Casidra annual report. In the first block, under the 2022 year column, there's an amount 25,318,000. Deduct the VAT of 3302348 there, and you get the amount on page 67, namely 22,015,652.
Honourable Maran, the question you've asked about these aqua farmers, I take you expect an answer from Casidra or from the...
No, the CEO have just answered. And I'm happy with the answer that I got from him.
Okay. Department?
Thank you very much. I'll ask my CFO to respond to the questions raised.
Chair, yes, point taken. It was perhaps a bit of more lazy writing than anything else, and for that I do take it on the chin. However, the argument of the EIA does stand. So my apology on that one. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah, you see, problem with the,
Thanks for the
problem with
honesty.
the EIA, it delays everything. Now, any further question, honorable members? You've exhausted your question both on E of the department and on E of Casidra. Okay.
I'm exhausted, you know. I'm not gonna I'm not gonna go through this again because again if you chairperson, if you take that VAT and you deduct it from that amount, it doesn't come to the amount that's on page 67. But I'm gonna leave it like that.
Yeah. Okay. No. So the Honorable Kondo was afraid that Honorable America will be again singing praises. So, now, okay, honorable members and the department as well as Casidra, let me make use of the opportunity to thank you very much for your presentation firstly, and as well as also for cooperating in giving answers to the question that we ask. But obviously, we are going to meet as a committee to take resolution. We might actually be communicating with you to actually have more clarity on certain things that we might resolve about as a committee. Thank you very much for your time. You can be excused. And then I think I will. Department of Agriculture and CASIDRA. You've listened to their comments and the answers that they were giving to your questions. Any indication of resolutions you'd like us to take?
Chair,
Honorable Masego.
I gave already the resolutions, I think the last voice. It was the issue of us to check this independence of CASIDRA and also to check the ripple effect of their performance through the predetermined objectives and whatever that the AG has find out there, that do we engage with them to get the assurance in details, not like we got them, just so that we can have a document of monitoring and interacting with them maybe after every 3 months to see the progress that they're making. And then the other
CASIDRA.
one, yeah, CASIDRA
In particular.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the other one, it's what did I talk about? Is the underspending
Yes,
of,
I've
and
noted
I
that.
think maybe, I don't know, we'll have to look, maybe if Dustin can have a look at the trend within different departments. Maybe it will be a universal thing to those that have increased underspending, that we look at to check to what extent did that affect the services that was intended for, because those are the monies that were committed in the budget. So the shortfalls, was it community dynamics, or was it the capacity, or was it, what is it, was it all about for that underspending? I think those are two from me.
Thank you very much. Honorable America. Okay. Will your mic? No. I'll come to you, Honorable Maran, please. Okay, thanks. Okay, then Honorable Konzo. I'm going to come to you. You know.
No, Chair, I think we must just ask the maybe update the reports from the internal auditees that have mesmerized our Chair and our beloved members. Just update the reports regarding their plan. I think as it relates to how indeed we are going to at least see a different audit report by next year.
I don't have the time to see them.
The audit committee. I like that. It's a good idea actually that we also hold them accountable as well. Not because we want them to come and see them, but we just want them to. So just so that we can also be seen to be holding even the audit committees as well accountable, because they keep on coming here and write good reports, but we never said, look, let's interact with you as the audit committee as well.
Saying then with what I said of CASIDRA, of the action plan, then we can combine them, that they come together to talk
excellent.
to us about, and also the issue of the steering committee of the stabilizing the relationship between the AG and the CASIDRA. It seems it's something that they see as a risk or as a concern. As if one is a policeman, one is a criminal, so we need to look at that.
They are busy policing each other. Honorable Maran.
Thanks. Look, I was saying I was happy with the response by the CEO afterwards that they will investigate. But I just have a discussion with the chairperson that let's give them the benefit of the doubt. And if they don't investigate, I will then approach the chairperson of agriculture to write to Scopa or not to investigate.
Let that be an agricultural issue, so it's fine. So that's progressive. Honorable Van Verstesen, any resolution you covered? And Honorable Kago? No. Then I think in that instance, then if there are no further proposal for resolution from members, let me once again, honorable members, as usual, make use of the opportunity to thank you for your indulgence as well as your resilience and diligence during the deliberation. It's been a very fruitful day once again. Thank you very much. The meeting is closed. Thanks. There is